let's go to Senator Mike Rounds, who's not really too pleased with the early signals he's seeing out of the Biden administration. Of course, the senators from the beautiful state of South Dakota. Good to have you, Senator. That's a lot of executive orders, actions, memoranda. What do you think? It eclipses his three predecessors at this stage combined.
Not unexpected, but most certainly disappointing. Specifically, the ones that we've been following, and the one in particular that really impacts my state is basically when he kills the Keystone XL Pipeline project. That's going to put a whole lot of rail cars with oil back on the rails. It's going to displace our ability to move our grain to market. It's going to impact dramatically our state and the surrounding states. Not a good way to continue to grow the economy. If you want to grow the economy, you allow for infrastructure to be developed, particularly that which is supported by private industry and which will grow the economy. This is a multi-billion-dollar project that would make it more efficient to move oil, which we're going to be using for decades to come. And unfortunately, he has immediately shut it down. Thousands of jobs, 10,000 jobs involved in this, over 3,500 in South Dakota, 2,000 that are already on the job. Pretty disappointing to us in South Dakota.
All right, to your point, and I think you touched on it, TC Energy, the first energy company out the gate to say, if this is shut down, 1,000 workers are shut out. It's laying off 1,000 of them. More likely will follow. We've heard that Alberta, Canada's premier, not very happy with this, maybe threatening legal action. I don't know what kind of legal action he can muster, but where does this take that pipeline? I mean, the Canadians can keep it up there, all points in Canada, and ship it to someone else, right?
That's correct. Look, they're going to pump the oil, and it's going to go someplace. It's too valuable not to, and we still need the oil. So it's either going to be shipped to other countries, including China, which has, not the same type of environmental regulations that we have when it comes to, the processing of that oil, or it could come back down into the United States to the specific locations where they actually know how to process it, to actually do that crude oil. Not all of the different refineries use that type of crude. So you got to get it to the ones that do. This was the most efficient way to do it. It's still going to get moved, but now they're probably going to have to go to rail cars. And when you go to rail cars, it's not as safe. And so this was simply the most efficient way to move about 830,000 barrels of crude oil per day that now will probably go either by rail or it'll go to another country. In any event, this particular company had already committed that they would make it carbon neutral in the transportation process, meaning you're not going to get the same kind of a commitment out of rail lines, and you're most certainly not going to get it out of barges or from the country of China.
Let's talk a little bit about the agenda and rolling things out. I guess the impeachment trial will technically start on February 8th. Do you think before that time, all of the president's key nominees can be voted on, as well as a vote on the $1.9 trillion stimulus plan, presumably before that trial were to begin?
Probably pretty difficult. I do think that our first priority should be allowing this president to establish his cabinet, to form his government. That's good for America. We may disagree philosophically on the direction that he wants to move the country, but he should have the opportunity to form his government, particularly in the areas of defense and continuity of government. So we had very few objections to the Secretary of the Department of Defense and to the Office of Director of National Security. Those items we've already passed through. Janet Yellen should not have a problem next week in being confirmed. And I don't think the Secretary of State will have a problem being confirmed. But after that, now we're talking about the different areas where they really reach in and do regulatory processes. And so you're going to have a lot of discussion about EPA. You'll have commerce. You'll have other areas where people are going to ask questions about what they want to do within their departments. The Department of the Interior, another one, they'll ask those questions. It'll take time to work our way through those, not in terms of trying to delay it, but actually doing the due diligence, which is expected. It does take time to work through the Senate. When you add in the fact that the president has indicated that he'd like to do additional COVID-19 relief, he's going to have to be able to share why he's not targeting it, why he has gone as broad as he has. Why is he asking for an increase in the minimum wage as a part of this, which he knows will slow down the process. I think targeted relief, if it's justified, and expanding out over a longer period of time because he doesn't think that we're going to get the pandemic under control. Reasonable discussions to have, and I think he'll have reasonable responses from the United States Senate. But I don't think he's going to be successful in saying, here's our program, take it or leave it, come on in, and we're elected now, and you got to kowtow the line. I don't think that's going to happen. And the fact that you put into the middle of it an impeachment, that will, and some people have said, well, can't you do both? And the answer is no, not without unanimous consent from 100 senators. So what you'll probably end up with, Neil, is once you start the actual impeachment trial, everything else shuts down, and we go to simply being jurors sitting Monday through Saturday until such time as the impeachment trial has been completed and a verdict has been rendered. Then we can get back to substantive work on the president's agenda and on actually responding specifically to the targeted needs in responding to the pandemic.
All right, we'll see what happens. As you know, Senator, some Democrats have argued you can, cut the schedule, address some of these other matters earlier in the day, impeachment stuff later in the day. But as you say, that does seem like a Herculean task. We'll follow it very closely. Senator, thank you for coming and joining us on a Saturday.